Welcome to MSP Voice, the weekly show for MSPs by MSPs. Brought to you by Cloudberry, the #1 cross-platform cloud backup. Learn more at cloudberrylab.com. This is MSP Voice. Hello and welcome to MSP Voice. This is episode number 12. So today, kind of our standard format now, we've got our best of Reddit, a couple of best of internet articles about information for MSPs. And then we're going to go into our interview. Today I'm interviewing Ryan Day. He is with ITR America. It's a little bit of a different type of interview. ITR is not an MSP, but I think you'll enjoy it because Ryan's really kind of taken the MSP approach to how they handle their IT needs at ITR America. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our best of Reddit. We've got a couple articles this week. First up is OneMan ISP. Essentially, someone's, he's got some experience doing help desk and all those types of things, wants to start his own MSP business either by himself, doing it all from scratch, or maybe joining someone else. So, it's a typical, hey, I want to become an MSP, I want to get started. Where do I start? How do I do it? A lot of great comments, suggestions here. The #1 here, Master Sheep 18 with seven points. Really just starts to say, he's also a one-man shop. Starting was difficult, but you have to stick with it. And he even goes into, the fact that, there's a lot of stuff that he maybe didn't realize he had to do from the beginning. He thought he could just go out and get customers. But, obviously he said the trick was to make customers come to him, offer a solid stack, stick to your customers, provide them the best service at the best price. So even he admits that he's nowhere near the income he'd like to be at, but he's steady. He made it with his own blood, sweat, and tears. So, basically stick to it. Don't give up. And there's going to be a lot more out there than what you thought. So, and there's a lot of really good suggestions here as you kind of go down and read the different comments. Some of them are basically saying, hey, you know what? You think you're a tech, but guess what? When you're a one-man shop, you're essentially sales. Because without sales, there's nothing to do. So you really have to kind of understand that sales process, that sales flow. Some talk about, make sure that you create a good sales funnel, how to manage your funnel, because that's, kind of something that's going to have to be very important as you move along. Now, it's kind of easy, and not necessarily easy, but, you start off as a one-man shop. Maybe, if you're really good at it, you start to grow the business and you can start to hire additional people to help you out. You always look to spouse, significant other, that maybe they have some capabilities and help. One poster was saying, his wife's a CPA, so she handles some of the accounting stuff. So, there's always ways to kind of look for help and not necessarily have to do it all by yourself, even if you are, quote unquote, a one-man shop. But definitely make sure that you have some money saved up in order to do this first, because there will be months where things are going great and months where things are not. And if you don't have, some cash to fall back on to continue paying the bills, keep the lights on, then, you may want to rethink your decision and save up some money before you actually jump in and start doing this. So a lot of great info here, a lot of great comments on this post. So if you're currently looking to jump into the MSP world as a one-man shop, check out some of these comments. Next up on Reddit is how important is the initial RMM platform choice? So, very obvious questions about, remote monitoring management software. There's a ton of posts on the MSP subreddit about RMM software. This one was kind of interesting because it's like, so again, another person just starting out, going to start small, have some specific needs, but really just kind of wants to make the right decision at the beginning and not have to change maybe a year down the road, 6 months, whatever. And what's interesting is a lot of the comments and people that have posted about that initial RMM choice, they've actually moved on to a different platform. So even though you want to try to get everything right the first time, you're probably going to change at some point. So what may have worked when you had 20, 30 endpoints or 5 to 10 customers may not be the same as now that you have 1,000 endpoints and 50, 60 customers. So, it's kind of, each platform has its pluses and minuses. and it does take an evaluation period. There's, asking someone what's the best isn't necessarily going to be right unless you give them exact details and information about what your setup is and how you're going to do it. So that being said, there's a lot of good comments in here about what people started off with, what they moved to. Some have stated, that, hey, I started off with a bigger system than what I needed. It was a lot harder to learn, but guess what? I knew that if I bit the bullet at the beginning and picked a system that was built for something larger than what I was now, that I would eventually grow into it and not have to switch. So that's kind of another approach. It does take a little bit more upfront, but kind of then you don't have to switch down the road, assuming you made the right choice, even with that system that was probably bigger than what you needed at the start. So, a lot of good advice here on how to choose that. There's also kind of, it goes back and forth between which RMM is better, who does what. That's not here nor there in terms of how I look at it. I think there's good solutions for every different types of situation. But if you do want to hear what people have to say about different RMM platforms, some good information here in the comments, and have at it. And if you have your own suggestions, comments, feel free to participate on this thread about how important is initial RMM platform choice. Next up is salespeople. What does a salesperson typically do at your MSP? So this poster is, they say they're a fairly small MSP. They've got 2 salesmen who are reactive. So basically, they do quotes, for laptops, PCs, and those types of things, but they're not necessarily very proactive. They're doing other admin work, reporting reconciliation that eats into their sales time. So he's kind of saying, would we benefit from an out-and-out salesperson who is proactive rather than reactive? A lot of great comments on here when you start talking about salespeople. So, probably the best one is salespeople should 100% be selling to new potential clients or assisting in onboarding signed clients, right? If they're doing anything other than selling, then they're not necessarily salespeople. They're admins who happen to maybe close a deal once in a while. So it's you definitely want to make sure that they're focusing on the sales. And again, same here. If you're not, if no offense, but if you aren't being proactive, you aren't really doing your job as an MSP. So a lot of comments here in terms of yes, your salespeople should be selling. Maybe you need to look at what you've thought about is getting someone who's definitely proactive and those types of things. A great post here is by OSR Rob, and I bring this up because in working for vendors for the number of years that I have, and if you don't know this kind of terminology when referring to salespeople, it's very important to know, and that is farmers and hunters. So basically, and trust me, I've met a number of salespeople. Salespeople fall into two categories: farmers and hunters. So a farmer is essentially someone who's going to tend to the customer, is going to grow that customer, going to continue to cultivate new opportunities at that customer, just like a farmer would in a field, right? They take care of it and they reap the benefits. They sow the benefits, after they've taken care of it for so long. So farmers typically work with customers, hand in hand, and do a great job at that. On the flip side of that is hunters. And hunters, they want to go out, they want to bag the customer, and then they want to move on to the next one. They're not so interested maybe in growing that customer relationship moving forward, but they are very good at getting new business and landing new customers. And OSR Rob does also say that you can't turn a hunter into a farmer, and you can't turn a farmer into a hunter. It's kind of that personality that's built in, that's innate. And in actuality, it does help to have 2 different types of salespeople, or multiple types of salespeople, because you've got some that are going to go out and be very aggressive at getting you new business, and you've got others that are going to take your existing business and really grow and build that relationship, and bring more revenue in over time. So, a couple different models to look at. He's got some great points. He even says, hey, if you have any questions, reach out, which I would definitely do that. And again, if you've never dealt with salespeople or worked with salespeople, some of this terminology can be a little bit different, but it's definitely good information to know and great way to grow your sales as an MSP. So those are our 3 selected Reddit articles for this week. A couple of other things that I found this week that were interesting this morning. This just came up in my feed about hackers using fax machines to take over entire networks. So this is from CNBC. Of course, scary headline, freak me out. Oh no, my fax machine is vulnerable. So, essentially what it boils down to is Checkpoint Software. They did some testing. They found some vulnerabilities, in particular HP all-in-one, faxes, printers, copiers. They notified HP. HP fixed the issue before the article was even published. So in terms of a vulnerability, as long as everything's patched, you're good. But what interested me is, it's an attack vector that we don't necessarily always think about. We've got all this software protecting our network. We've got our routers, we've got malware protection, we've got all this stuff in terms of the network. But here somebody just dials a phone number, uses some code to put some malicious software into a device that is connected to the network. And now you've got it inside your network because it went through a backdoor that was a phone line. So, something to think about. Even though, the article, the information here mentioned that HP has patched the issue, it's still something to think about for those all-in-one devices that may be plugged into a phone line as well as plugged into your network or on your Wi-Fi. So again, just like everything, keeps things segregated so that not everything can get to everything, but you still want to make it easy for your users. But definitely something to think about if you have customers with fax lines, and if you do anything in the medical industry or real estate, then you probably have a fax machine or 2 laying around. Your customers do that they're using. So as old as the technology is, it still gets used even to this day. And then finally, on a security note of types, not really security, there's a report that from ZDNet that an AWS error exposed GoDaddy business secrets. Now, it would make it seem like the error was on AWS in terms of how AWS is run. But that's not actually the case. It's actually a configuration issue. Now, it was an AWS salesperson that actually misconfigured the S3 bucket, but it was down to a configuration issue, not an actual issue with AWS. So, again, the headlines sometimes get it wrong, but it just goes to show that when you set up your storage, when you're setting up your services, make sure to follow the proper protocols. So in this event, essentially GoDaddy's architecture, as well as some of their configuration information, AWS pricing and negotiations and all these types of things. This was apparently set up by an AWS employee who didn't follow the proper protocols. All that information was put in there, and it was exposed, although GoDaddy says no customer information was ever stolen, and they don't believe that anyone got the data before they realized that it was open to the public and that anybody could have gotten. They don't think anybody actually grabbed it. But if they did, again, they said no customer information. Amazon released a statement as well. So, everyone's aware of it. And again, it's not an AWS error. It was an error in configuration of Amazon S3 buckets. So, always take these headlines with a little bit of grain of salt because, they like to scare you. But then when you actually read the article, it's not necessarily as bad as what you thought it was. So always be wary and definitely read those things before you go forward. So with that being said, that's kind of our best of Reddit, best of internet for this week. And now we're going to go ahead and jump into the interview. Again, we've got Ryan Day with ITR America. ITR, they're a heavy equipment parts manufacturer and distributor. So it's a little bit different, but Ryan actually goes into how they've set themselves up as an MSP and some of the tools and things that they use. So very good information. We also talk a little bit about downtime. So whether it's an IT or heavy equipment, downtime could definitely cost you money. So enjoy the interview and we'll see you next week. Hello and welcome back to MSP Voice. Today I am joined by Ryan Day, who is with ITR America. Ryan, why don't you give us a brief introduction, who you are and what ITR does?
ITR is a aftermarket parts supplier for heavy equipment. We currently have 10 distribution centers across the US and Canada, and we have 8 retail stores that we deal with. And we basically distribute these parts for heavy equipment, and we are responsible in the IT department to keep all the computers running at all the stores and branches.
Okay.
I personally, I work in here with one other IT guy, and it's just the two of us for a little over 200 computers.
Wow. So yeah, you're not. So why ITR is not a managed service provider?
Correct.
You essentially act as one to keep everything running across all your different locations.
That's correct. You know, when I first started, everything was being done a little bit different at each branch and location.
Mm-hmm.
We've kind of put everything on a familiar platform, if you will. And so we kind of took the managed service approach because internally they're our customers, if you will. You know, we're not have to worry about billing them or anything, but for managing them, we tried to make everything exactly the same.
Okay, yeah, you'll have to worry about you'll have to worry about advertising and getting new business, but you definitely
Exactly.
you still have everything else to do on top of that, so it makes sense.
Yep.
So, what about you? Did you what about your IT career? Did you did you have something else first? Did you go to school? How did you get started in this?
Yeah, I actually went to school for IT. I went, just a general computer science degree, but I started playing with computers in '96, graduated with my degree in 2000. But as most of us IT guys, our life has evolved in many different directions. You know, it's not just the break fix model of fix a virus, fix a broken computer, that sort of thing. You know, I deal with everything from VoIP services to networking, VPNs, web development. So we're touching all facets of life, over here at ITR when it comes to the IT field.
Yeah, and that's a lot of our managed service managed service provider partners. I mean, that's kind of what they do too. You have to generalize in a lot of different areas. You have to be able to understand a lot of different things, right? You're not just the VoIP specialist. You're not just the networking guy. You're the everything guy, everything IT.
Yep. Yeah, and when you can't find the answers, you got to have your good vendors and your suppliers to go to.
Yeah. Or when Google fails you.
Yeah, exactly. For instance, you guys at Cloudberry, you guys are backup specialists. We've had some problems, and they've helped us overcome things, and they're a good team of people to call on.
Great, thank you. So you said previously, was it when you kind of came into it and you kind of transitioned everything over to managed service? You said everything was different at each one of your locations, and you kind of had to standardize that. So I can imagine that's kind of like going from break fix to more managed service. Is that kind of how that transition looks?
That is. And I feel like we're always in the transition, right? I mean, we've transitioned the backup stuff from break fix to, a managed service. We've transitioned the antivirus to a managed service. We're continually, as we find problems or we have repeat events of things that are broken, we try to find an automated solution or some type of product that can help curb that situation to make the user's experience better, as well as our experience in trying to keep things up and running and fixed, because these internal customers need their machines in order to provide parts for all this equipment.
Now, do you also use any remote monitoring and management software as well?
We do. We recently just switched from, we used to use LabTech, and now we're using a product called FileWave, which is actually in a lot of the schools, and we got a name from somebody about that. But yeah, we use that remote management software to, primarily to remote into their machines, but it will also give us machine data health and, if a process is gone out of whack or hard drives getting full, things like that, we do use that same product for that. But the best part about that product is actually the mobile device management part of it. It's an RMM with an MDM inside of it. So we're finally able to control our wireless network because we can push profiles out to these devices through this MDM. And that's been one of the best things about that product.
Cool. Now, mobile devices, is there a standard hardware platform that everyone has to use, or is it bring your own, or how does that work?
Well, that's one of those transitions we're going through, right? Okay. So, the company before was, we can provide you one. Some people don't want to carry two devices. Okay, so bring your own. But with the process of profiling now, we something comes up on the screen that says ITR, has control of your phone. So some people aren't liking that. So now they're actually wanting a company device, but we give them that option. We're flexible. Okay. It's just saying, hey, if the device is lost or stolen, we're going to have to wipe it. It's for the integrity of the company, right? And security. So, so we got a mixed bag, but 95% of it's probably, Windows computers, but then the rest of it's, all the mobile stuff is Mac, or Apple, if you will. So, very few Androids, but primarily iOS systems what we're supporting.
Okay. And, obviously, you don't have to really specialize in terms of any type of verticals, because I'm guessing all your locations are you're getting them to be standard, right? And they all kind of do the same
Correct.
type of thing. So,
Exactly.
that makes it easier. What about, you mentioned you switched RMM, you've got some backup in place, those types of things. How often do you reevaluate those tools and what you're using?
Quite a bit, actually. We find flaws in certain types of software that we're like, gosh, we wish it did this, we wish it did that, or a broken part that the vendor can't fix for us, right? So if they can't fix it for us, and we feel like this just ain't working, there's got to be a better mousetrap, we go look, and that seems to be every 3 to 6 months, actually. We try to stay loyal with who we pick out of the gate, and most of them tend to work with us, and that's kind of how this meeting came about. We gave Cloudberry quite a picking last week, and they're working with us on everything. So we stay the course with them. They're willing to work on things because they're a newer company and growing as well. So we encourage that as well as they encourage it, and they're easy to work with. So yes, we're always on the up and up as far as like if we feel there's a better fit, we'll move. But so it's every 3 to 6 months.
Cool. So I know one of the other things I wanted to talk to you a little bit about was this idea of downtime. And we talked before we recorded this. I related some experience. My dad worked at Caterpillar for over 30 years. That's heavy equipment. He was in parts distribution. And when you think about heavy equipment and the kinds of parts that you guys supply, it's about, hey, if something's broken, you need to get it fixed as soon as possible. You need that part to be there. You need to be able to source it, find it, whatever. Because in heavy equipment, you're doing something, you're fixing a road, you're mining something, or whatever, but downtime is money.
Absolutely.
And so that kind of got me thinking, it's the same in the backup world, right? Is why do we do backups? We do it to avoid downtime or to minimize, or that if something happens, we can recover as soon as possible. So
absolutely.
What has been, just in terms of downtime, how are you guys trying to minimize that at ITR for your computer systems?
So a couple different ways. We've had 6 hard drives fail probably within the last 12 months. And, prior to that, if a hard drive failed, it's like, oh, well, your stuff got lost because, you didn't update it on a flash drive or the external hard drive. We were successfully able to take those, get a new machine for the person, whether it was replace their hard drive or just order them a new machine right away, and literally, restore that same backup in the same file structure instantly from Cloudberry right out of our S3 buckets. That was pretty impressive, and everybody was like, "Wow, this is great! I didn't skip a beat." Yeah, you're gonna have your downtime with a machine coming in, but we're even trying to stage an extra machine at each location now for when that happens, right?
Okay. Yep.
So you got a little spare availability there. So that's what we're trying to do to curb that. But that is the most important thing, is these people being down. They're selling parts, like you said, people that are putting in, whether it's data communication lines or building buildings, something for a local community, that all adds up in downtime.
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely agree. So are you just focusing on the workstations? You doing the servers and the backend systems as well?
We are. I mean, as technologies evolve, one of the big things we're doing right now is we're pushing away from physical servers, right? We're putting everything as virtual servers, right? So we use the Cloudberry software not only to back up the files on these servers, but what we're also doing right now is these 2 virtual servers will at night shut down, and they'll clone to each other's VM hosts locally internally in our network. But they'll also go to the S3 bucket, the whole virtual machine will. Yeah. Okay, and then we'll take a copy and backup of it up there. That way, if something happened to the building, we could actually get back up and running from a disaster recovery standpoint. We've actually spun up our version of VMs up in Amazon into an image and got it going.
Great.
So we're using it from the server level all the way down to the workstations.
Great. Yeah, and that offsite is so important. As you just mentioned. Yep. So that's a little bit about downtime, how you're minimizing it. Obviously you've got a strategy in place, seems pretty solid. Just kind of moving on. And when you look at technology today, whether it's technology that you work with at work on a daily basis, it's something a consumer, what kind of technologies are you most excited about? What are you?
I honestly think what I just spoke about, that virtualization of things. The old days you got to wait a week for the server to get here. It takes you 8 hours to load the operating system, get things halfway configured, right? these days within Amazon, within 20 minutes, you got a server completely spun up, ready to go. You're networked into your cloud up there.
Mm-hmm.
And we even replicate that technology here locally. And, we use Linux to do it, actually.
Okay.
So we have 2 big Dell servers with they're our VM hosts, if you will, and everything runs on there. We can spin up a test instance for a developer if we need to let them practice and play on. That's just light years beyond where I ever thought we'd be, 5 years ago, being able to spin that stuff up that quickly. Yeah. And to really get rid of the actual hardware and the maintenance and the long-term cost of having that hardware in your facilities.
Yeah.
So that's what we're most excited about and really getting converted to.
Okay. Now, what about, so we've mentioned cloud a couple of times. How much have you transitioned much of what you guys do from on-prem to cloud, whether it's software as a service or, even infrastructure as a service?
Yeah, probably about 60% of the, we've torn down 60% of the hardware servers. We're getting down to the nitty gritty where there's a lot of detailed processes now. So those are taking a little bit longer to convert, but we are, trying to convert almost every last bit of it if we can.
Okay. Yeah. And I know sometimes just, especially, you guys deal with manufacturing and, there's sometimes specialized applications and, that you can't necessarily move to the cloud. So,
sure. Absolutely.
It doesn't work for everything, but it works for a lot of stuff.
Absolutely.
But kind of, sticking on technology, what are some of the technologies that you're most worried about, that kind of keep you up at night?
Well, these viruses that, in this, cryptoware and crypto locker and things like that, ransomware, that, it's scary. It seems like they're getting into banks, they're getting into government places. I mean, that just leaves everybody, in my opinion, vulnerable to the situation. But how you prepare for it, I think, is a big part of it. We're trying to do things to combat by putting our shares internally on Linux systems instead of Windows systems, because those seem to be hacked and targeted a little more easily, right? Yeah. So we're trying to, that's a fear to us, to have all your stuff crypto locked. But having this backup in place and having previous versions is a huge part of it, right? I mean, at least maybe you didn't lose it all and you only lost a couple days if they really locked everything down, but you have previous versions to fall back to, which is big. But that's probably the number one thing that keeps us up at night.
Okay. Now, just kind of going back to that, I know a lot of times, ransomware gets in through phishing attacks and those types of things. Are you doing any type of training or, at least notification to users on what to and what not to click on?
We are. I mean, I've always said that, I think 90% of the malware phishing attacks and ransomware attacks that are through phishing is education, right? Yeah. Educating the users on what to open and not what to open. We do run and maintain our own mail filter, if you will. Again, with a Linux product. So everything comes through there, and we strip out a lot of the obvious stuff. Executables, zip files, the popular things can't come through, but you still get the phishing attempts, right? And it might be from the old-fashioned UPS one or the American Express one that we all kind of know about. You just don't click on those links, right? And we kind of have a rule of thumb. We tell our people, listen, if you weren't expecting it, don't click on it. And, if you don't know the person you're dealing with or that it came from, and you have no business relation with them, well, then delete it. Better to delete it and call and ask them if you need something than to click on this stuff, right? And we've had a pretty good success rate between the antivirus and the malware that we use in conjunction with each other. We've had a good recipe, and we have, knock on wood, have not had an attack here or any downtime from it.
That's good. Like you said, though, education is definitely the important thing. So I appreciate that. All right, so we are actually to our rapid fire round.
All right.
Got just a couple of quick questions. Don't put a lot of thought into it. Just the first thing that comes into your head. We'll move through these pretty quickly, and we'll see how it goes. Are you ready?
All right, great. Yep.
All right, so first up, Apple or Android?
Apple.
Okay. Mac, Linux, or Windows?
Yeah, they all have their place, all three, but I'm a Mac guy.
Okay. Amazon or Azure? Or someone else?
Amazon.
Okay.
Amazon.
I know the answer to this one, local backups or cloud or both.
It's actually going to be both now. We work cloud only, but we're starting to put the local ones down here too.
Okay, great. And then this one, which is worse, printer support or vendor cold calls?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to go with printer support.
Okay.
That's an ugly one. Do not disturb what's well for the other one.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so it's easier to push off a vendor than it is to fix a broken printer. So that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Great. Ryan, this has been great. Any last parting thoughts or tips and tricks that you've learned along the way that you want to pass out to our audience?
Not at the moment. I mean, I think we hit some of them with the cloud services and kind of what we're doing for disaster recovery, and that seems to be what a lot of companies are doing right now. So it's
Okay,
been great
great.
talking with you.
Yeah, Ryan, it's been great talking with you as well, and hopefully we'll have you back on as a guest again sometime in the future.
All right, sounds great.
All right, have a good one. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.